Imagine someone taking a deep breath from a cloud of smoke. For thousands of years, humans believed that moment could change their state of mind. You've probably felt something like that, or watched someone else reach for it. But here's what you almost certainly don't know. That same impulse, the reach for smoke, the deep breath in, the altered moment that follows, is older than agriculture, older than writing, older than the wheel, older than almost everything we think of as civilization. The oldest known evidence of humans using tobacco dates back at least 12,300 years. And that number isn't a theory, it's a seed. In 2021, archaeologist Daron Duke and his team were excavating a prehistoric hearth in the Great Basin Desert of Utah, a shallow stone-lined pit that ancient people had used to cook seeds and prepare food. Buried beneath the ash, sealed inside that fire pit for over 12 millennia, they found 4 small charred seeds, seeds from the tobacco plant. They weren't there by accident. They were deliberately placed, burned, possibly smoked, possibly used in a ritual we can no longer fully reconstruct, by people living in North America long before anyone assumed humans had settled in large numbers. Duke's findings were published in Nature Human Behavior. They pushed back the known history of tobacco use by thousands of years, and they raised a question that no one had quite articulated so sharply before. Why? Tobacco is only the beginning. Humans have been inhaling smoke in ritualized, intentional ways for nearly as long as they have controlled fire. The question isn't whether ancient humans smoked. The archaeological evidence strongly suggests they did. The real question is why, and the answer is stranger and more human than you might expect. Let's go back. Let's reconstruct a world without cigarettes, without pipes, without tax stamps and cancer warnings and vending machines and the particular modern shame of standing outside a building in the rain. Imagine you are in the Pamir Mountains of Western China. The year is roughly 500 BCE, about 2,500 years ago. The air is cold and thin at this altitude. A burial ceremony is beginning. Wooden braziers, small portable burning bowls, are being filled with the seeds and flowering tops of a plant. The fire is lit. The smoke rises inside the enclosed space. Everyone breathes it in. The world doesn't just feel different. It feels unlocked. In 2019, a team led by researcher Yimin Yang at the University of the Chinese Academy of Sciences analyzed the chemical residue left inside those same wooden braziers, excavated from a burial site called the Jirzankal Cemetery. What they found was tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, the active compound in cannabis, at concentrations significantly higher than the wild cannabis that grows naturally in that region today. This wasn't accidental contact with a local plant. These people had deliberately selected and burned high-potency cannabis as part of a burial ritual. The evidence strongly suggests they were deliberately seeking its psychoactive effects. The findings appeared in the journal Science Advances and pushed the evidence for intentional psychoactive plant use back to a time long before any written record of the practice exists. So why did they do it? Why does the urge to inhale smoke appear in culture after culture, continent after continent, stretching back further than the oldest city on Earth? To understand this, you have to understand something that most people today have completely forgotten. For most of human history, the boundary between the physical world and the spiritual world was not a wall. It was a door, and smoke was the key. The anthropologist Johannes Wilbert spent decades studying tobacco use among dozens of indigenous groups in South America. What he documented, published in his landmark 1987 work, Tobacco and Shamanism in South America, was not casual, recreational smoking. It was smoke as a tool for transformation. A shaman would not inhale to relax at the end of a long day. Anthropologists generally believe these rituals were intended to help shamans enter altered states of consciousness. Within those traditions, these experiences were understood as communication with spirits, ancestors, and the unseen forces believed to shape the natural world. Within these traditions, tobacco was understood not as a vice, but as a vehicle for transformation. The healer's use of smoke was understood as a way of reaching the spirit world, as if picking up a phone. The smoke was believed to be the signal, and this pattern was not limited to the Americas. Across the ancient world, it repeats. In the ritual incense burners of ancient Egypt, priests burned kaifi, a resin compound of juniper, cinnamon, and myrrh, to communicate with the divine. In Siberian shamanic traditions documented across centuries of ethnographic record, burning herbs were inhaled as preparation for trance journeys into other realms. In the ancient Vedic texts of India, the sacred fire ceremony called the yajna was not simply symbolic. The inhalation of sacred smoke was understood as part of the ritual's actual effect, a conscious crossing of the boundary between ordinary awareness and something larger. Smoke rose. It disappeared into the air. It moved from the visible world into the invisible one. When you inhaled it, something in your perception crossed over too. Let's slow down inside one of those moments. Picture a group of around 30 people, your band, your entire social world, gathered around a fire as the sun drops below the savanna horizon. Someone is sick, a child maybe, or an elder whose breathing has become wrong in a way no one can name. The healer, the one who knows the plants, who has spent years learning which smoke does what, prepares the leaves. The fire is fed. The smoke begins to rise. Everyone watches. Everyone participates. This is not passive. This is collective medicine. The healer's trance is not a private hallucination. It is a shared event, witnessed by the entire group, legitimized by centuries of tradition, with recognized stages and recognized outcomes. And when it is done, whether the sick person recovers or not, the group has done something together. They have faced the unknown together. They have named it together. They have tried. That act of collective trying, of ritualized confrontation with the unknowable, was one of the primary mechanisms by which human groups maintained coherence across generations. It was social glue, disguised as botany. The Harvard ethnobotanist Richard Evans Schultes, who spent much of his career in the Amazon documenting plant knowledge of indigenous cultures before it was lost to time, observed something that took years to fully articulate. The psychoactive plants that ancient peoples used were not chosen randomly or naively. They had been selected through thousands of years of accumulated empirical knowledge. The right plant, the right preparation, the right dose, the right ceremonial context. What looked to outside observers like superstition was, in practice, a highly sophisticated pharmacological system developed entirely through observation and preserved entirely through oral tradition. These cultures knew what the plants did. They had simply organized that knowledge in a framework that modern science did not recognize as knowledge. So before you ask why ancient humans smoked, you should ask what they were trying to accomplish. They were trying to understand what was happening to them. Imagine the world before germ theory, before meteorology, before neuroscience or medicine or any systematic model for why people get sick, why rain falls or doesn't, why children die or survive, why crops grow or fail. The forces that controlled your life were invisible. You could not see them. You could not measure them. You could only experience their effects. A person with enough plant knowledge, enough training, and enough access to the right smoke could enter the space where those forces were understood to live and negotiate. That was not irrationality. That was adaptive behavior in a world without laboratories. And here's the part that your health class never mentioned. Nicotine, the compound in tobacco that creates dependency in modern smokers, is not something the tobacco plant made for you. It's an insecticide. The plant evolved it to poison insects that tried to eat its leaves. It disrupted insect nervous systems and drove them away. Your nervous system responds to it for one simple structural reason. Nicotine is shaped almost identically to acetylcholine, one of your brain's primary chemical messengers. When nicotine enters your bloodstream, your brain cannot fully distinguish it from the real thing. It floods receptors that govern attention, memory, and focus. It sharpens cognition. It suppresses appetite. It creates a brief, compelling sense of alertness and calm. For a hunter preparing to track prey across cold terrain for hours, even a temporary boost in alertness could have been valuable. That doesn't make nicotine harmless. Modern research clearly shows it is highly addictive, but it helps explain why humans may have continued using tobacco for thousands of years. For a healer preparing to enter a trance state and navigate an invisible world on behalf of a sick child, it served a specific and coherent function. The ancient person who smoked was not a failure of willpower. They were a human nervous system responding to a molecule that had been shaped through millions of years of plant evolution entirely unrelated to human experience, to feel almost identical to what the body already produced on its best days. The subjective experience was real. The question was only what you used it for and in what context. The trap came later, not with the plant, with the removal of everything around the plant. What made ancient smoking ritual was context. It was communal, done together, in the presence of others, embedded in a shared story about why this moment mattered and what it was for. It was periodic, reserved for ceremonies, transitions, crises, hunts, deaths, and celebrations. It was intentional, entered deliberately, with a specific goal, guided by someone who understood the territory and what you might find there. Strip all of that away. Pull the molecule out of its container of meaning. Remove the community, the ceremony, the purpose, the guide, the shared story. What remains is only the nervous system's ancient hunger, running forward without direction, reaching for something it was wired to receive, and finding nothing on the other side but the habit itself. Metaphorically speaking, every modern cigarette is a ghost of an ancient ritual. The gesture is exactly the same. The reach, the flame, the inhale, the exhale, the brief dissolving of tension, but the meaning has been hollowed out. The community is gone, the ceremony is gone, the healer is gone. The invisible world the smoke was meant to reach has been replaced by a parking lot or a stairwell. What's left is the biology, still doing exactly what it was doing 12,000 years ago beside a hearth in the Utah desert, still searching for the crossing, still waiting for something to open, still wanting to arrive somewhere that matters. Your ancestor who sat beside a fire and breathed in smoke was doing something that made complete sense in their world. They were participating in a language older than any spoken one. They were trying to reach through the visible into the invisible. They were, by every measure available to them, doing the most important work a human could do. You are the inheritor of that impulse. The biology has not changed. The world around it has. You lean back. You inhale. Something in your body shifts. Your ancestors felt that too. For most of human history, your ancestors believed they knew what they were reaching for.